And at the end of that time, of course, I said, well, I can't continue doing this ministry with adults if I'm not trained. So they said, well, go find a course to be qualified. And that's how I got the 2 years in Chicago.
Right, so I was going to ask you about that. Someone, Clay had said that you had spent some time overseas. So.
The 2 most marvellous years of my life.
And why?
Well, I guess I was a bit of a workaholic. I'd work, and I loved people.
How old were you when you went over?
About 38. I had my 40th birthday then.
Oh, wow.
So, yes. So, 2 years at a Catholic university, and I went to study pastoral ministry to equip me to work in parishes. And we studied hard during the week, but we had a ball on the weekends because we thought, we might never get here again. So it was just an opportunity. We did all sorts of things in the study, human relations stuff, theology, scripture, health and well-being. So it was a real smorgasbord, but it did equip me to come and face more confidently the roles when I came back to Australia. So then when I did come back, I continued on for the next number, probably 15 years, working in full-time parish ministry with a priest generally. I started off when I came back from overseas in Brisbane, and then I moved from working with parishes. I went to Toowoomba and I worked with the bishop there for 4 years in pastoral planning because things were changing. Fewer priests, and they were wanting to look at other models of ministry out in the southwest of Queensland. So I was on the road working with smaller communities. How would they cope when there was no longer a priest there? So I was training lay people to be ready to lead the parish communities, and in the absence or no longer having a clergy person there. So that was exciting too, because it was, and that probably gave me a bit of a taste for the Western Downs, and then I was tapped on the shoulder to become part of our leadership team. So I had 6 years living in Brisbane at Aspley, but I went to Sydney twice a month, and I had South Australia and Queensland on my portfolio. So that was a very different sort of a job, but I'd much rather be out in the field with people.
Yeah, you don't think of nuns or priests leading an exciting life, but
you don't.
You have led an exciting life, so
I've had a wonderful life.
Shed some light on that.
Thank you.
Sister Carmel, you talk about where you've been led to. Do you believe that we're all led if we just stop and listen for a bit, it's available to all of us to be led in a certain direction?
I do, because when I was in Chicago, I did a course with this guy. He was a most wonderful teacher. I had many wonderful teachers, but he was a great devotee of Joseph Campbell, which I don't know if you've read any of his books, but Joseph Campbell had an expression that said, follow your bliss. And he believed that very thing that you've just said, Kelly, that, if you're really in tune with your inner core, and I believe that's the God place for me, that people are led if they're attentive and attuned to what's percolating or circulating in one's heart. And I think we need help sometimes on that journey, and that's why today many people, a number of people in not just the Catholic tradition but other traditions, have what they call a spiritual companion or a spiritual director, where they would meet and talk with somebody about their life's journey, their spirituality, and if they're looking for some kind of the deeper meaning of life or what might be the call for them, this person, the companion, journeys with them, and there's a ministry emerged in the church. And at this spirituality centre, which I came to work at 6-7 years ago here in Richmond, I began a program, and I did 3 years of it to become a spiritual companion, because I feel that's the work I'm doing more now, that I walk alongside people wherever they're at, and just offering them the opportunity to explore who they are, how they are, and what might be drawing them to something deeper. And of course now we've got the opportunity of people having had this experience of the flood event, and you know, that's basically what I'll do all this year. I'll just be walking with people, and in their time of gladness and sadness.
It was interesting what you said to me when we just first sat down about you had the option of leaving, but something made you stay.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me about that.
Well, I'll tell you what happened there.
Everybody does that.
Well, since I've come here 6 years ago, I believed that the most important thing I could offer the community was service with the gifts that I had, and I thought the only way I'm going to be able to do that is to get out there and meet people. So I networked into the community, and I went to every camp draft or rodeo or field day, whatever was happening. But I also networked into the school. I took the choir for the first couple of years, just as a bit of an interest, but also connecting to people, and I got to know people quite well. But what was the catalyst? There was a gentleman in the hospital who was very ill, and I got a phone call from someone, would I go up and visit him? I got up there, and he was certainly knocking on heaven's door, and his 2 daughters came from Townsville, and when they met me, they said, oh, you were at St Mary's College, Charters Towers, you were the school captain. And of course I didn't remember them, but they were Claire and, I can still see them, Claire and Trish, they might even watch this video. And we had an instant connection, and their dad did die, and they said, would you do the funeral? So I began.
What a privilege.
It was a wonderful privilege, but since then I've done about 30 funerals in the community, and it's been an amazing privilege. But when you asked about what kept me or helped me in my discernment here last year, this is pretty personal. We had one of our graziers, he was only in his early 70s, he died, and the family approached me and said, would I do the funeral? Well, I thought, wow. And they said, it's going to be at the racetrack. And I said, oh, because often we do it at the town hall, have the funerals at the town hall, because we need to have a comfortable place.
Yes.
Well, look, it was just something, if you could call a funeral beautiful, it was. And they set up that racetrack where the bar and everything was, as if it was like a cathedral, really, with Hessian and all the symbols of Dad's life. And because he was a racing man himself, they actually asked could they have a closing procession carrying his body out to the racetrack and put it on the ute, and he did the last lap of honour around. Well, I mean, that, you imagine what that did to everybody.
Yes.
And then it was anyway. There were 400 people there at this funeral. I would say 400 at least, and it was just such an overpowering sort of an experience for me up front, but for nearly everybody who was there as wanting to honour this man and support his family. And I just thought, you know, I wouldn't have even been asked to do this 6 years ago because I didn't know the people, but it was a real sense of, you know, when you do take people seriously and when you connect with their lives and when you connect around the table, the kitchen table, preparing a loved one's funeral, people are very vulnerable, but it's in the vulnerability that you connect at a much deeper level.
Oh yes.
Is what I have experienced, and I just began a process of discerning, you know, would I go after 6 years or would I stay? And I included the mayor and a few other people in that conversation, and I came to the decision that it would be good and the calling for me to stay another year at least. And so that's what happened, and I did come back this year, and I think I said to you earlier, you know, I don't think I would have lived happily if I'd been somewhere else this year, knowing what tragedy and disaster sort of unfolded.
Within, you know, around your community with the people that you really cared about.
Oh yes. So, you know, it's just been, and I think that's very much the hand of God, as I describe it, you know, being led, but you know, you've got to search your heart.
Yeah. So how do people find that? I guess it's a quietness of your soul, do you think, to allow that to come in? How do you find? Well, how do you let that into your life? Well,
I think we have to get better at the art of creating the sacred space for that to happen, and it's not easy. Like in the secular world we're in, and in the busyness of life, you know, I just look at these people now that I know who have suffered enormously say, as a result of the floods. And I just think, oh, if only they've got time to allow their spirit to heal, because it's been traumatic. And I just think, how are we going to help create some sacred spaces? It's not my job, but how can I make some little inroads to see if that's... but it's not so easy, because sometimes people don't know what they want. But we did have here, just 3 weeks ago, a Liturgy of Lament, which I advertised through the community, and I would loved more people to have come, but I don't think the time was right to have a big crowd. But I don't go for big crowds. It's whoever's going to be touched by this. And we actually used 2 poems written by a fellow from Charters Towers who came out here, Patrick. He worked on one of the properties with the helicopters, and he came back to help this family when they were doing the fencing. And he wrote a poem both times. Angels in the Sky was one. You might have seen that on Facebook.
Oh, yes.
Brilliant.
Yes, I did.
Brilliant. And then he was back here just 3 days before we had our service, and he went back and he wrote this one called Silence. Have you seen Silence?
No.
Brilliant.
No.
So I used those.
So what is that, Patrick?
It's Patrick, yeah.
Patrick Sharp.
Yeah, Patrick Sharp, that's right.
Okay.
It is. Yes. I hope he doesn't mind me telling you so.
Oh, no, I'm sure he won't. Patrick, it's all good.
Yeah, well, I haven't talked to him yet, but through the family, I got permission to use them at the service that we had. And also there was a little Year 9 student who wrote a very heartfelt story about, Mum and Dad and her brother and sister. And so much. And just on Friday, I had a request from the St Vincent de Paul person in Townsville, could he take it to the Premier this week? Oh, wow. Because they look for stories. The St Vinny's must report to the government every week, because the government provides some of the money that they're distributing. And I thought, well, isn't this extraordinary? I've got to get permission now, and I will. But this story was just touched people's hearts so at our service, but also I've sent it to a couple of people with this little one's permission, just sort of saying, Mum and Dad we wanted to be there, but Mum and Dad wouldn't to a boarding school, wouldn't let us come home because they didn't want us to see the dead cattle, just things like that. So it's quite extraordinary, how it's all sort of panned out, and I'm glad I'm here.
I'll bet you are.
For this year.
You were saying, when we were talking about finding that peace, we have a friend just west of Julia Creek, Jay Hall, and she lost a lot of her beautiful stud cows, but and it was as traumatic for her as everybody else. But when things started to settle down, she had, I'm not sure how many cattle there were, but there were 10 old cows that she would go out to every day and feed them. And she said that was her happy place. And and she put it up on Facebook, so she won't mind me sharing it. But someone said, well, if that's your happy place, you make sure you go there every day. And she would go there every day, spend 5 or 10 minutes, and that would give her the sustenance, I suppose, to get through her day. So it's so important to find that little bit of peace. Oh,
it is, Kelly. And I refer to the sacred space. I say to people, well, where's your happy place, or where's your sacred space that you need to be in to help get some rejuvenation and some peace of body, mind and spirit, and just encouraging people to know that places.
And as busy as we all are, it's so important to take that time.
It is.
I couldn't help but look at your calendar that says there's no happiness greater than tranquility.
Oh, yes.
I just saw it on the calendar there and I wrote it down.
So, it is, that's true.
That's a really good thing to remember.
So true.
Sister Carmel, thank you so much for agreeing to be part of the Sisters of the North Ambassador team. I can't think of anybody better in this region to hand out some money to people
thank you.
in
I'm
need.
delighted to be invited, actually, and it was only at that meeting the other day that I heard a bit about it, but it was subsequently in the evening when I saw the video that I think that you were featuring and describing something about it, and it touched me deeply. And I was very happy when Clay invited me to consider the invitation, so thank you.
Well, that's in very good hands, that money getting out in the Richmond region.
It is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelly.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching our video. I hope you enjoyed it. And please try to remember to just click on the subscribe button so we can keep you updated with everything that's happening. Thank you.